1 minute.
It's basically a requirement. If you don't do it, this kind is from grant programs. So if you don't make the changes, you can't apply for like a MassWorks grant or a couple other grants. There's some large money possibly attached to some of those grants. You won't be in compliance if you don't make the changes. But we don't apply to the requirements yet until we make the apartment change. So because they designate anyone that's an MVP, if you don't make these changes, you're penalized by being disqualified from grant programs. They're trying to basically make towns boost housing options. What the intent is. They can't, technically the state can't tell us you have to make a zoning change, but they can penalize us by we don't make the change. So if we did that. We would still be under the community, but we'd be disqualified from grant programs. One of them being MassWorks, and that has theoretically a lot of money attached to it. Grant program. Yeah, it's a way for the state to kind of force their hand, even if you don't want to do something. Increasing housing, the town needs housing, housing costs are high. It's harder to because there's not much land. Auburn's pretty well built out, the only work really left is up, and it's apartments. And right now the apartment is restricted because it requires a special permit. Yep. It, right. Currently, an apartment requires a special permit through the zoning board of appeals and a site plan approval of the planning board. This change would get rid of the special permit aspect and just do the site plan approval, which is essentially by right, but it allows the planning board to kind of regulate how it's being built, make sure if they're following zoning properly, make sure they're protecting neighbors and stuff. They can't just go and build anything built by right. They still have to come to the planning board and fit the requirements. So there's still the sure. Okay. Sure. All right. Sounds good. You're welcome.
Check one, check, check. Check one, one, two. Better.
because this is a new concept. All right, so how much money came from the transit authority as a result of this zoning bylaw change? I don't know. There's no past history because, yeah.
So we wouldn't really be able to know if the grant program.
So that would come under the MassWorks grant? Okay.
MassWorks, capital projects fund, and the Housing Choice Initiative.
So there are three sources of funding. Right.
But when I wanted to develop things,
We wouldn't know. We wouldn't have to apply for it.
MassWorks,
well, I for past what we done from those programs in the past.
MassWorks works on different wells.
Yeah. We put in the grant for it. Didn't get approved, but it's available, you know. So it's pretty significant. Yes.
Not that I'll be able to see you, but I'll. Nothing.
fine. No, I don't have to do anything. No, you always have it right. Yeah, whatever, yeah. Now if we could only get going. This confusion, you see, over whether we need 80 or 40. That's the problem. Oh, okay. Yeah, and so I guess we're going to get going. And then, well, I can't do anything yet anyway because I've got to be appointed. I know Chet's not here, so they either. No, no. Well, Doreen can move it, or I think Deb was going to just say it that we need a moderator. And if they don't want me, then that's fine. I can be. I mean, the funny part of it is this meeting's not going to take a long time, I don't think. We've never had this many two-thirds votes. 9? I mean, really, in all the time I've been doing it, maybe 2 or 3. But there's a whole bunch of things that they have to change from the annual town meeting, I guess it was the fourth article, which always has borrowing, and that means that even if what we're doing to change it is from that fourth article, and it doesn't say borrowing, it doesn't matter. Everything that you do is a two-thirds vote. We're going to be able to vote.
We think so. So,
Is that a use of stage mic?
good evening. We are ready to start. So we do have a quorum, and Chet Stencil is ill and unable to be here tonight. So I'm asking for a motion to elect Charlie Baker moderator for tonight. Charlie Baker had been moderator for over 25 years prior to Chet being elected, and Chet appointed Charlie as his assistant moderator. Is there a motion to elect Charlie Baker as moderator pro temp for this town meeting in the absence of the moderator?
I move to elect Charlie Baker as moderator for tonight's town meeting.
Is there a second? Okay, at this point, I would administer the oath of office to Charlie.
Okay. Yes, there are new town meeting members here, some of whom may not have been sworn in already. If so, would they please come forward and they'll be sworn in now? Okay, good. Some of them aren't new. Some of them look old. No. Yeah, I know. Some of them look old.
If you guys want to come over.
Thank you. All right. You want me to read some of this? Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, at the first order of business, I have examined the warrant and the constable's return of service and ask to waive the reading of the warrant. And I guess did they vote on that? No, okay, fine. Now, we will be electronically voting tonight, which will register the votes quickly and accurately during the meeting. And in all my years as moderator, we have never had a meeting with 9 2/3 votes before. It's because of some things in the warrant where you're changing from Article 4 at previous town meetings. Article 4 has borrowing in it, therefore all votes on Article 4 have to be by 2/3 votes, even though what you may have as a line doesn't have borrowing in it. And that's why we're going to have these votes, these 2/3 votes. We want to remind any town meeting members to turn off any Wi-Fi hotspots. When the voting starts, the green light will go on. The light will be off when it is ended, and it will be announced when it has ended. During that time, you'll be able to vote. Press the green button for yes, the red button for no. If you accidentally press the wrong buttons, you can change it during the voting period. If you decide you do not want to vote, do not press any button, or you can press the yellow for abstain. Once the voting has ended, no votes will be allowed. Since we did in motion on electing the moderator, we will not need to do a test to make sure everything is working properly. All articles will show as pass or fail. And now we should please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, and I did notice that Senator Moore and Representative Forster here this evening, if they'd like to show themselves so people can see them. All right, thank you. And now, I'd like to introduce, there are a couple of things I want to say, because we do have new meeting members. All right. So with new members here, the hallmark of town meeting is civility. We address articles, proposals, and principles. We don't address one another. Do not line up at the microphone. If you do, hell will freeze before I recognize you. Raise your hand, I'll see it, and I will recognize you. On any given article, you may speak only twice, and the second time is after other members have spoken. And are all town meeting members, by the way, in the front and not in that back section? If you're a town meeting member, you have to be up in the front section. Okay, good, thank you. And now I would like to introduce Mr. Kazanovich.
Is that better? Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Moderator, members of the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, School Committee, appointed and elected officials, and town meeting members. Before we get started tonight, I want to take this opportunity to recognize our town manager, Julie Jacobson. This will be Julie's last town meeting. I would like you to join me in showing our appreciation for her dedication and commitment to public service here in Auburn. Auburn is in a much better place as a result of your devotion to the town of Auburn and to the community. Please join me in wishing Julie and her family good health and happiness as she embarks on her upcoming retirement. Thank you, Julie.
All right, thank you. Oh, yes, and something else on 2/3 votes for people who aren't used to meetings like this. The 2/3 is based on the number of people voting, not on the quorum. So we have a quorum of 80, and let's say only 60 people vote, then the vote that passes or fails will be based on 2/3 of the 60 people who voted. Article 1, to hear the report of the Finance Committee, other town officers, and committees, or act on anything relative thereto. Yep.
Good evening. The Auburn Select Board makes the following recommendations on the special town meeting warrant. Articles 2 through 7, the Select Board voted to recommend approval of these articles. Articles 8 and 9, the Select Board voted to defer to the petitioner on these articles. Articles 10 through 23, the Select Board voted to recommend approval of these articles. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance Committee?
Good evening, and thank you for your participation in the town meeting process. In the warrant before you, Article 2 makes adjustments to the fiscal 2023 budget voted on at the May annual town meeting. On the revenue side, the exact amount of state aid that the town will receive has been confirmed by the state legislature. An estimate is used at the May town meeting. Certain line items in the budget have been updated to meet current needs, and these line items include, this includes increases to the various line items for electricity, gas, and oil, and increases to the fleet maintenance department. In accordance with the town's fiscal management policy and free cash policy, $500,000 will be appropriated to the OPEB Liability Trust Fund and $500,000 to the Stabilization Fund. The Finance Committee takes the following positions on the articles. Article 2 to 14 recommend approval. Article 15, defer to the petitioner in anticipation of an amendment to the article. Article 16, recommend approval. Article 17, defer to the petitioner. Article 18 to 20, recommend approval. Article 23, defer to the petitioner. Respectfully submitted, Ann Kavanaugh, Chair, Kevin Kennedy, Vice Chair, Edward Coleman, Trevor Sansucci, Michael Marshall, Diane Byrne, and Patrick Jones.
Okay. Article 2, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to amend Article 3 of the May 3rd, 2022 annual town meeting as printed in the warrant.
Is there a second? There is a second. Do you now have an amendment to make to that article, Ms. Goodrich?
Further, all the items in Article 2 are exactly the same as they were in the town meeting warrant, except for the one that says add line item 01220 Fire Department, 01221-51147 Fire Mechanic for $36,000. It should now be amended as to increase line item 014-211-51103 wages full-time from $637,015 to $673,015 for an additional fleet mechanic.
Is there a second? Fine, we have a second. So what we now have to do, before we do the full article, is to deal with this amendment by voting on the amendment. But perhaps before we do that, we should have Mr. Kazanovich tell us why we're doing what we're doing.
Thank you, Michael. I have a brief presentation that I'd like to summarize the warrant for you tonight as it's being requested. As you can see, you can follow through behind me on the detail of Article 2. The total request being asked of you, town meeting members, tonight is $765,678. The description is on the warrant, and be happy to any questions relative to any of the line items. Articles 3 through 22, you're being asked to vote on a total appropriation of $1,298,000. The total ask of Article 2 and all other warrant articles, not including the amendments, that's just repurposing money. That money's already been voted and earmarked for other purposes. Total ask is $2,063,678. When we look at the sources of funding for each warrant article, Article 2 would be funded through $782,678 of general fund revenues, ambulance receipts of $71,000, and a reduction of enterprise funds, SOAR enterprise funds of $88,000. Article 3 would be funded through general fund revenues of $25,000. Article 8 would be funded through general fund revenues of $10,000. Article 9, general fund revenues of $7,500. Article 10 is being requested from overlay surplus, $500,000. Article 11, $200,000 from overlay surplus, $300,000 from free cash. Article 14, general fund revenues of $14,000. Article 18, from free cash of $20,000. Article 19, $60,000 from enterprise fund. Article 20, from expendable trust, cemetery perpetual care of $3,000. Article 21, $8,500 from perpetual care. And Article 22, $155,000 from SOAR enterprise. Total by revenue source, general fund revenues, $834,178. Total ambulance receipts of $71,000. Total enterprise funds of $127,000. Total overlay surplus of $700,000. Total from free cash of $320,000. And total from expendable trust of $11,500. When we look at the funding sources that were approved at the annual town meeting and the difference that is being asked of you tonight, there would be additional tax levy request of $479,551.33, or a 1.9% increase. Cherry Sheet state aid was up $31,070 from what we estimated at the annual town meeting. Local receipts, now that we know what the actuals were as of June 30th, that was amended to reflect an increase of $191,000, roughly $415. That's a 1.8% increase. Available funds, primarily overlay surplus and free cash, of $1,504,490, or 68.48% increase. There was a change in the cherry sheet charges as estimated in May versus what was voted by the legislature, $8,955, as well as cherry sheet receipts of a reduction of cherry sheet offsets of $16,108. In enterprise fund receipts and indirect costs, a change of $118,185 for a total variance that matches what we're asking in terms of appropriation request of $2,063,678.08. Here is a summary of revenue and expense as it relates to total taxation. We have total appropriations of $78,496,476.57. As you look at the revenue sources, local receipts, cherry sheet, tax levy, debt exclusion, available funds, equal amount of $78,496,476.57, giving us a balanced budget. The level of taxation as a result of what is before you tonight would be a taxation of 1.69 out of 2.5%, or a total utilization of 67.61. Our excess levy would grow from $7.877 million to $8,287,000. What does that mean, excess levy? Excess levy is the amount of levy that we're not charging. Sorry about that. Excess levy is a buildup of levy that we're not taxing on an annual basis. As you can see, the fiscal year is in the far left-hand column. The numbers in red represent the level of taxation that we have levied on an annual basis. I want to identify the current year, FY 2023, at 1.69 out of a possible 2.5. If you look at FY 21 and FY 2013, those were 2 years we did not tax 1 penny to the taxpayers of this community. Over a 13-year period, as a result of the buildup of excess levy, we were able, if we wanted to tax an additional $57,080,909. We have not done that. As a matter of fact, the DLS inquiry today revealed that Auburn's excess levy is in the top 5% on a total dollar value throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That means 331 communities have less excess levy than the town of Auburn does, which means that we're taxing much less than other communities are throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Mr. Moderator, that's a summary of the warrant articles tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as we move along.
The conversation has to be on the amendment. Are there any questions on that amendment? Do I see a yes?
It's precinct 4. I assume the amendment is dealing with what Mrs. Goodrich read about the highway, fire department. I'm trying to understand is why is the fire department creating another maintenance department? We already have one in the DPW. And why are we hiring a mechanic for the fire department? Shouldn't this all be under DPW? They have, so suppose they have all the resources.
Mr. Moderator, if I may answer.
Yes, you may. By the
Thank
way,
you.
Mr. Frost, this is Ken Frost who is speaking.
I can,
Thank you, Mr. Frost. You ask a great question. There are actually two amendments tonight related to this item. We've been looking at our fleet maintenance for a number of years now to try to make a determination as to whether we're able to handle all of the equipment and apparatus that we have from all of our departments. And over the years, we've increased the inventory, we have more equipment to maintain, and the sophistication of the equipment that we do have has just increased over the years. It's much more difficult to maintain these equipment in our vehicles. It requires, in some cases, more training and certainly more manpower than we currently have. So when we first proposed this warrant article, the thought was we wanted to have someone dedicated to the fire department for the fire apparatus. Currently, the fire apparatus takes up maybe about 45 to 55% of the entire time of fleet maintenance. So we realized that a lot of those vehicles have to be fixed on an emergency basis. When that happens, the vehicle maintenance and preventative maintenance on the other vehicles has to get put off because you have an emergency. You have to get your fire apparatus out there. You have to get your engines. You have to get your ambulance. So we wanted to hire an additional fleet mechanic to be able to service the fire apparatus using the ambulance receipts. It's an eligible expenditure with ambulance receipts to maintain the fire apparatus. The initial article that you saw under item 2, and again under article 15, which is related, was to create the position within the fire rescue department. Following conversation with the finance committee and additional meetings that we had internally with the Board of Selectmen as well as internally, we decided, to your point, Mr. Frost, that it would be better to keep that position at DPW and have it dedicated to the fire apparatus. We've got to get that apparatus on a regular schedule of maintenance. We've been doing that, but again, it's not that we're not doing the maintenance, but we can't keep up with the maintenance given the volume of work in that department. The department's grown. We created the department in 2012, and our fleet has grown as well as the other equipment that's maintained. So at this point, the amendment is to change the wording from having the fleet mechanic at the fire rescue department to having the fleet mechanic in the current DPW fleet division. So it will remain there. And then if I may, just to look at Article 15, because it's related, the amendment on Article 15 that we will get to reduces the item down from 155 to 115. There were two reasons for that. Number one is it was a Scrivener's error. The amount and line item in Article 2 that you're seeing before you, this line item, was counted twice. It was appeared in again in 15. So we have to reduce that. We only need that dollar amount one time for half a year position. The other aspect of that is that we just changed the wording because any equipment that's purchased will be for the maintenance of the fire apparatus. There's certain equipment that we have to maintain the fire apparatus at the level that it needs to be maintained. So we are enhancing the ability of DPW to get that done. The fleet maintenance position would be a joint report to both the DPW director and the fire chief. And the reason for that being, first of all, the revenues to pay for it are coming out of ambulance receipts, and the work is very technical to the fire department, but the position will remain in DPW. I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Are there any other questions on this? Seeing none then, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by raising their hands. Are we going to vote on everything? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, we're going to vote by I'm going back to the old days. Electronic lights on. Okay. Voting has begun, and when it goes off, voting has ended. I will announce that. I've been told. Okay. All right, voting is over. And what is the vote? Yes, 71. Okay, and how many? 8. It's voted. It was not a 2/3 anyway. All right. Yeah, thank you. Article 3, Ms. Goodrich. Oh, we have to, I'm sorry, we amended. Now we have to do the whole of Article 2. We now have to do an amended Article 2. Are there any questions on the rest of Article 2 now that it's been amended? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 2, vote now that the light is on. And now that the light is off, voting is over. And it yes, 72 to 8. It's voted. Thank you. All right, Ms. Goodrich, Article 3.
I move that the town meeting vote to amend Article 12 of the May 3rd, 2022 annual town meeting so as to increase the Medicaid reimbursement from $100,000 to $125,000 for Medicaid receipts within the general fund revenues to the Auburn School Department operating budget for fiscal year 2023 to fund supplies and medical, therapeutic, and educational services for significantly disabled special needs students, as well as tuition and transportation to and from outside placements or within the district for special needs students.
Thank you. Is there a second? And please, if you're seconding, raise your hand high, because it's hard to see. Okay? You got it? Okay, fine. Are there any questions on Article 3? Seeing none, voting has started. And voting is over, and again, it passed 77 to 4. Now, Article 4, and if Article 4, we are going to see the first of the two-thirds vote articles. Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to amend Article 20 of the May 3rd, 2022 annual town meeting by deleting the words May 2020 and inserting in place thereof the words June 2nd, 2020.
Is there a second? I see seconds, yes. You got one? Are there any questions? Seeing none, let us begin to vote. And the voting is over. And the vote is 77 to 2. That's certainly two-thirds, so it is voted. I want to write that down, 77 to 2. Great. Article 5. Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to amend Article 22 of the May 3rd, 2022 annual town meeting by deleting the words account number 302020-582061 and inserting in place thereof the words account number 3020-582060.
Is there a second? Yes, there is a second. You got one? Okay. Are there any questions? Seeing none, voting begins. Voting is ended. The vote is 79 to 1, certainly two-thirds. 79 to 1. Article 5, Ms. Goodrich. Or did we just do, no, I'm sorry, we just did 5, right?
Yeah. Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to amend Article 26 of the May 3rd, 2022 annual town meeting by deleting the words May 2020 and inserting in place thereof the words June 2nd, 2020.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, again, it's a two-thirds vote. Voting is ended. The vote is 78 to nothing. It passed. Article 7. Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to amend the purpose clause for Article 4 of the May 7th, 2019 annual town meeting, building rehab, central administration, for $95,000 from HVAC window replacement to district-wide building rehab for installation of backflow devices on each of our water mains at the following: Randall Building, Swanson Intermediate School, Bryn Mawr School, and Packagug School, as well as additional asbestos work to be completed.
Are there any questions? Second, yeah, good, thank you. Second. Oh, yeah. Question, okay. Voting is over. The vote is 78 to nothing. It passed. Now, Ms. Goodrich, do you have a motion to make?
I do. I move that we take all the two-thirds articles out of order to keep them together, which will include out-of-order articles number 12, 13, 15, 16, and 23.
Is there a second? There is a second. Is there, and so the first, and now the vote. All those in favor of taking the rest of these articles out of order so we can get them all done, please signify by raising their hands. Oh, you don't raise your hand anymore, I know. Yeah, I'll get out of 1920 sometime. Yeah. Voting is ended. 73 to 7 on the amendment. And so now we are going to go to Article 12.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to repurpose the balance of $11,005.78 from Article 4 on the May 4th, 2021 annual town meeting, line item Police Furniture Replacement, account number 062-102-582210, for cost associated with handgun-mounted optic systems.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. And voting is over. And it passed 70 to 9. Ms. Goodrich, Article 13.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to repurpose the balance of $13,455 from Article 4 on the May 3rd, 2022 annual town meeting, line item Police Fingerprint Chamber, account number 022102-582305, for costs associated with handgun-mounted optic system.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let us vote. Voting is over. And it passes 66 to 14. Article 15, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to repurpose a portion of the $300,000 from the ambulance reserve for appropriations account by amending Article 4 of the May 3rd, 2022 town meeting replace ambulance as follows. Authorize $150,000 towards the establishment of a fire rescue department fleet maintenance division.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions?
Mr. Moderator, I have an amendment on this one.
You have an amendment.
I do.
You do, all right.
Mr. Moderator, I want to amend as follows to see if the town meeting will vote to repurpose a portion of the $300,000 from ambulance reserve for appropriations account by amending Article 4 of the May 3rd, 2022 town meeting, replace ambulance as follows. Authorize $115,000 towards equipment for the Department of Public Works Fleet Maintenance Division.
All right, is there a second on the amendment? There is a second on the amendment. Are there any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, let us now vote on question. Yeah, we're going to do the, I know, so let's do the amendment first. I don't actually think the amendment itself had it to be two-thirds, but that's fine. It's lovely. And now we're on to the article itself as amended. Are there any questions on the article as amended? See, do I, oh, Bruce, okay, yes, please. It's a little hard to see, unfortunately.
Bruce Hopper, Precinct 1. I'm just trying to figure out what we're voting on, because it seems like we had voted on replacing an ambulance, and now we're voting on a public works truck?
Either Mr. Kavanaugh or Ms. Jacobson will have to answer your question.
Hi, Bruce, how you doing?
Good.
So the original vote to appropriate money for an ambulance is being amended for several reasons. Number one, there is a gift pending that is going to give the town approximately $500,000 towards the purchase of a new ambulance. That frees up the $300,000. As Julie had explained under a portion of Article 2, the new fleet mechanic that's going to reside under DPW is going to require some additional equipment, including lifts and things of that nature.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All right, all those in favor then of the amended motion can now vote. Yeah, but because the whole thing was yeah, I can. And it passes 71 to 9 as amended. So let me get that written down. And now we get to Article 16.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to repurpose a portion of the $300,000 from the ambulance reserve for appropriations account by amending Article 4 of the May 3rd, 2022 town meeting, replace ambulance as follows. Authorize $60,000 towards the purchase of emergency medical services simulation training equipment.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, then, we can vote. And now the voting is over. And it passes 74 to 5. Okay, and now we go to the back page to Article 23. I think that's the next, am I right? That's the
Yes.
next one, yeah. Okay, Article 23.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to amend Article 3.2.2.3, Table of Uses, Apartments of the Auburn zoning bylaw as printed in the October 18th, 2022 special town meeting warrant.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? I see somebody's hand over there on the left-hand side. Please come forward. Oh, I guess I see two people up there.
Ellen Ethia, Precinct 5. I see here that it says that there needs to be no less than 3 units and no more than 12. It doesn't say how high they're going. Is this all single level, or does it go up to 2 stories or 3 stories, or what? And should that be included in this description?
Mr. Moderator, the height allowance is in a separate section of the zoning bylaw. In the residential areas, it's only 35 feet. It's across all residential areas. I believe the local business district can go up to 80 feet or 110 through the special permit. The local business district is area of Southwood Street opposite the mall that runs along 290. That's the only location that have a higher density.
So are you saying that this would all be single-level apartments?
No, I'm saying it's can only go up to 35 feet, so they maybe like at 2 or 3 levels.
How many floors is 35 feet? Is it 2 or 3?
It would depend on how it's built. I would say 2 to 3, depending on the floor level. The building code, I would require that.
Right, thank you.
There was somebody else too, yes? Yeah, I know, it's somebody else.
Actually, Tim.
Excuse me, please introduce yourself.
Yes, Tim, Precinct 2. I have a couple of questions.
Excuse me, is that mic on?
Hopefully you can provide a little bit of clarification. I understand that if we adopt this article, we would be adopting the by right process in place of the current permitting process. So I wanted some clarification on exactly what would be bypassed from our current process if we replace that with the by right process that this article would require from the state.
So currently, for an apartment to be built in Auburn, it has to go through 2 boards. Zoning Board of Appeals permits a special permit. Planning Board does site plan approval. With this change, it would not be going to zoning board of appeals, it would just go through planning board.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. The other question I had is I'm trying to figure out if this article is going to be beneficial for the community or detrimental. And I'm wondering why the state is trying to force this down our throat to require this zoning change for us. I understand that there's an incentive. I understand that we won't be eligible for certain grants as an MBTA community if we adopt this, which also begs the question, what are the benefits of the MBTA community? And if we don't adopt this article, how will that affect the MBTA community status that we currently have?
So the state made Auburn an MBTA community last year as part of their large economic development bill. One of the parts of that bill was requiring MBTA communities to adopt apartments by right. If the apartments are not adopted by right, it will eliminate Auburn from eligibility for 3 grant programs: MassWorks, the Local Capital Projects Fund, and the Housing Choice Initiative. So plainly said, if this does not change, Auburn will not be eligible for these grant programs. These grant programs, there's the possibility of large sums of money, particularly MassWorks. Auburn would not be eligible for large infrastructure projects through this program. That's the benefit is for Auburn is to remain eligible for these grant programs and to pursue these grant programs. Otherwise, if infrastructure projects need to be done, it would come from, I would presume, some form of tax levy or borrowing. And without these grant programs, the funds for the projects have to come from somewhere.
And so if we don't adopt this, then we would not be an MBTA community any longer, and we would be eligible for those grants. Is that correct?
We're now an MBTA community. That won't change. We just won't be eligible for these grants.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, we need your full name for history.
Tim LaBelle.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, back.
To the eaves or to the peak of the building? Is the height requirement the 35 feet to the eaves or to the peak?
To the east, to the peak. That I don't know. That would have to go through building code. I'm not the building commissioner. I'm not sure how they measure that. 35 feet is standard across town in all residential districts. It's about the size of a large colonial or a large cape. That's about the best I can tell you.
Are there any other questions? Somebody over here? Oh, yes, Ms. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm just curious to know if the planning board or the ZBA weighed in on this.
The planning board had a public hearing and they voted to recommend approval of this article. This did not go before them, no.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I think, am I right? There are none? Adam, you think so we can move the slide or whatever we have to do to vote? Okay. Voting has begun. Voting has ended. The vote on this does not attain 2/3. The vote is 46 to 31. And even without taking a calculator out, I think we can say that 46 votes out of 77 is it's not a two-thirds vote. This did not pass. Okay. That's good. Look, it's me. Yeah. All right, in case you were wondering, we have now concluded the two-thirds vote part of the meeting. The most two-thirds votes I've ever seen, 9. So we have to now go back to page 2, I think. Let's see where we are. And we're going to do, we voted that. We're going to do, no, it's page 3. Article 8? Yes, we're on page 3, Article 8. Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $10,000 from general fund revenues for the installation of water backflow valves in Auburn's municipal building as mandated by the federal government.
Is there a second? There is a second. Did you get it? Are there any questions? Seeing none, we can now vote. Yeah, the vote is 79 to nothing. So it passed. All right, Article 9.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $7,500 from general fund revenues for the repair of a section of rusted pipe for the town hall sprinkler system.
Is there a second? Okay. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we can now vote. So this is voted 78 to 3. Article 10.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $500,000 from overlay surplus to the town OPEB, other post-employment benefits liability trust fund.
Is there a second? Yes, there is. Did you get it? Okay. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we can now vote. Voting is over. 73 to 4, this one passes. Article 11, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $500,000, of which $200,000 will be from overlay surplus and $300,000 will be from free cash to the town stabilization fund.
Is there a second? Yes, there is. Are there any questions? Seeing none, we shall vote. Voting is over. 2 to 6, this one passes. Article 14, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate the sum of $9,000 from general funds revenue for a proof of concept relative to the proposal for a new radio tower/communication system and for an AVTEC firmware upgrade for radio dispatch.
Are there any questions? Second, yeah, second. No questions, so let's vote. This is 14, right? Voting is over. And it passes 73 to 6. So now we go to 17, Article 17, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to rename a portion of Water Street running from Route 12 to Oxford Street North to Veterans Way.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. Voting has ended. And it passed 68 to 9 with 3 abstentions. Not that abstention here. So 68 to 9. Article 18, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $20,000 from free cash revenues to purchase a new air compressor and associated electrical equipment and electrical connections for the DPW highway garage.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. Voting is over. And the vote is 78 to 1. Article 19, Ms. Goodrich.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $60,000 from the Packagug Golf Course retained earnings for the design of drainage improvements and irrigation systems upgrades.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. Voting is over. And the vote is 71 to 8. It's voted 71 to 8. Article 20. Ms. Goodwin.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $3,000 from the cemetery perpetual care account for the replacement of trees and other landscaping at Hillside Cemetery.
Is there a second? There is a second. Yeah, well, any questions? Okay. Vote. Well, you know, in case somebody has a question. I'm always taking things. Voting is ended. 75 to 4, it has been voted. Article 21. Somebody has a question? If somebody has a question, that's fine. Yeah, all right, good, thanks. Son. Yeah, it's hard to see. We haven't got an article yet, but that's all right.
Hi, Mr. Moderator. This is Kenny Fairbanks, Precinct 2. Can we have a reconsideration on Article 23? Because that is state mandated, and without that, we can't apply for any grants. So I don't know if we can reconsider that. Maybe Mr. Casanovich could come up and say a little thing about it.
Okay, so we have a request here, actually, a motion is being made
To reconsider.
the vote on Article 23. Is there a second for that And I see many seconds. So I would guess, and I would guess that Ms. Jacobson can tell us what we should know.
Sure, thank you for the opportunity to just ask town meeting members to reconsider that vote. So just by way of context, about maybe a year and a half ago, the legislature put forth this legislation that MBTA communities, and I could be off by a couple, but I think it's about 121 communities in the Commonwealth, that MBTA communities be required to change their zoning. Our zoning did allow for this with a special permit. The legislation requires that you allow for it by right. The height does not change. Nothing else in the zoning changes. It's just the state requires these multifamily to be by right instead of special permit. It is a requirement. It's a mandate. A number of communities, we spoke out against it. We don't like to have things mandated to us that don't necessarily have local input, but the reality is the legislation passed. And at this point, we are required as a community. I can't tell you what the punishment is if we don't do it, but I can tell you that not being able to apply for grants is significant. One of the grants that really concerns me, that not being able to apply for, is the MassWorks grant. That is, years ago, if you may remember, going back many, many years ago, there were UDEGs, there were CDEGs, there were all kinds of EDA grants. Everything was combined in the state under the Mass Department of Transportation into one overall umbrella category called MassWorks. MassWorks grants fund infrastructure improvements, both horizontal and vertical, and they provide up to, I don't know what the maximum is going to be, but in the past it's been $1 million grant threshold for applications. We have applied, I believe, twice for MassWorks grants, Joanna. I think 2 times for the Sword Street culvert replacement, which is about, and this is dollars from 3 years ago, that was about a $1.2 million project. If we were to get that grant, that would reduce our costs from 1.2 down to 200,000. So we intend to apply for that grant again. It's a critical grant for us. It's really competitive, but we apply for this grant all the time. I'm just concerned that we won't have that opportunity to do that. So I just ask that you reconsider that vote. It is a mandate to do this. We do allow it now by special permit, and this would change it to a by right. If it doesn't pass, I just wanted everyone to understand that by not passing, you're eliminating the opportunity of the town to go forward and apply for several grants. I don't know if that will change in the future. Will they add more grants to that list? I don't know. But right now, that's one of the grants that really concerns us that we won't be able to apply for. That's a major grant for DPW to be able to look at for, again, for culverts, for roadways, for infrastructure, for any kind of sewer. There's a lot of opportunity for that grant, and I hate to see us not have that opportunity moving forward in the future. So I would just ask that you would reconsider the vote that was on the floor before you now. Thank you.
Yes. Actually, this is the first time I've had a reconsideration vote in all my years as moderator. And the problem I have is, and I need Attorney Hennigan on this, the original vote was a 2/3 vote. Now we've got a reconsideration vote, and does that also have to be a 2/3 vote to wipe out the original, if it would have passed, to wipe out the original vote? Mr. Hennigan is coming forward.
Moderator, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be involved this evening.
Always happy to have you here, Bob.
Mr. Moderator, the town bylaw states that the town meeting will be governed by town meeting times,
Right.
as you very well know. Town meeting times on the question of a motion to reconsider, in the absence of a bylaw, states that it is a majority vote. So the vote to reconsider is
Will only take a
carries
majority.
by majority.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hennigan. So all we need, one way or another, is a majority vote for reconsideration. Are there any questions now? I mean, yes, I see a hand raised up back.
Colleen Hines, Precinct 5. So you're saying this is already allowed, and if we vote no, we'll just lose out on grant money?
I'm going to turn to our town planner to just clarify this, but it is allowed right now by a special permit.
Okay.
Yes, it's not that it is not allowed at all. It is allowed by a special permit. This would change it to a by right.
So if we vote no, it could still happen with a special
Oh, yes.
permit?
If you vote no, it's still able to take place by special permit, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The other question, can you repeat it, Colleen?
Just that even if everybody votes no, it can still happen with a special permit.
Correct,
So we would just lose out on grant money by voting no.
correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
So this still goes before the planning board, though? There is still oversight of it, it's just,
As the bylaw stands right now, any apartments go before the zoning board of appeals for the special permit and planning board for site plan. If the change is approved, it would still go before planning board for site plan approval.
okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
Sean Paradise, Precinct 5. So if we don't get these grants, this could potentially affect the budget and raise taxes, potentially.
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Moderator, if I can take a
Oh,
shot at that one?
certainly, yeah, no,
Thank
of
you.
course not.
Yes, in general, any of these grants that we've applied for, infrastructure grants, if we put something in our CIP to fund it down the road and have to borrow, take out bond proceeds and pay debt service on that, there is a cost to the taxpayer. I would tell you that we apply for grants all the time. It's something that our entire town administration has really been focused on. We've been really proud of the fact that I believe as of December 30th, we'd received about $14.5 million in grants in the last 11 years. We're very focused on getting grants. Those grant dollars reduce the need to either put money in the operating budget, depending on the item, or put money in this CIP for borrowing for a capital expenditure. In this particular case, an infrastructure grant like that would come out of take it off of the CIP. And the Sword Street project is something that needs to get done. We continue to seek grant funding for it. If we don't get grant funding, we are going to have to fund it with tax levy dollars.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, yes? Well, it's too damn dark. Wait, well, there's somebody over there too, and then I'll get you, sir.
Danny Lodges, Precinct 4. So all the taxpayers are going to be paying for that sewer project and just not the people who are hooked up to Auburn Sewer Department? So, I mean, there's still tons of houses that are not connected to the sewer. Is that what you're saying, the Sword Street project?
Mr. Largess, thank you. I am not quite sure the direction of your question. There's two different issues here. There's the zoning that's required to be changed by the 121 communities in Massachusetts that are so-called MBTA communities, which is based on your distance from MBTA stations. So that is a zoning requirement. I guess the impact of not voting for that is the inability to apply for certain state grants. When I mentioned the Sword Street project, for one, that is one particular grant that we have applied for Sword Street culvert replacement. That needs to be done. That's a major access and egress into that area. There's, upwards of 3,000 vehicles and cars that go in and out of that all the time. If that collapses, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the back end of that toward Boyce Street. So that is an important project to us. I'm not sure the line of your questioning regarding the taxpayers.
I thought you said something about the sewers, and so it has nothing.
Sword Street.
So it's just Sword Street.
That was the project that we had applied for. I will tell you that with MassWorks grants, you can apply for a number of different projects. You can apply for an infrastructure project to support a development that's going in. You can apply for infrastructure through the MassWorks program to support a business that needs to expand, and yet they need to do work on the public way to make that project possible. MassWorks grants are generally tied to job creation, so they are important grants to be able to get because the state has tied them to the ability to create or retain jobs in your community. So it's an economic development mechanism to promote business development and to repair and to repair and build new municipal infrastructure in the support of business development.
I thought you were talking about the Sword Street pumping station.
No, the culvert.
All right,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
And there was somebody, yes, sir.
Matthew Benoit, Precinct 4. Understanding the table of principal uses that is in the warrant, curious which zones are changing from special permit to site plan approval, if any, or if this is entirely new. I remember this being in the zoning bylaws, but just curious if all we're changing is a couple of zones from site plan to from special permit to site plan approval, and which zones those are. Thank you.
The proposed changes to go from special permit to site plan in the RA district, the RB district, and the local business district, so 3 zones.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none. Oh, okay, now. Okay. If you're going to ask a question, get your hand up, please, so I can see it. It wasn't up when I
Tim
first
LaBelle,
looked.
Precinct 2. I'd like to request Town Council to answer one question, if he's still available.
You wanted a question to the town council?
If he's still available.
Yes, he is.
So my question for him is, I heard someone mention earlier that this is a requirement, and I'm wondering if it is actually a statutory requirement that's being handed down from the state to rezone these particular zones as a by right process.
Mr. Hannigan.
Mr. Moderator, sir, I have not seen this statute, so I can't answer that question. I'd be happy to take a look at it if somebody had the statute, but I have not been asked to look at what the statute says, so I have not seen it.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I think someone else mentioned, or Julie, I think you mentioned 14.5 million or so grant money that we've gotten over the past for a couple of years. My question in regards to that is, how much of that has come from these 3 specific grant programs that the state is going to be shutting off from us, essentially?
I'd have to go back and look at that. I can tell you the last 2 times we applied for the MassWorks grant, and that is the major one. There are a couple of other ones, and I don't recall on our grant chart which ones we've applied for that we may have received. We've received, I think at this point, 358 grants, so I'm not sure of that. I can check it. I can tell you the last 2 times we applied for MassWorks, we did not get it. But it's also my understanding that if you continue to apply for it and you continue to show the need for it in your community and link it to job creation, which we try to do in the industrial park, that enhances your chance of getting that grant. But we have not received it the last 2 times.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any. Okay, so let us vote. Oh, he's got to do what he has to do. Okay. Yes, absolutely, and it's just a majority vote. Voting has ended. The vote is 62 to 16. The reconsideration passes, and 2 abstentions. Doesn't matter on the abstention. So it passes. Therefore, the original vote on Article 23 is dead now because it's been reconsidered, and instead we have this new vote. We're not doing it. Let me ask Bob, as I say, excuse me, Bob, do we now have to redo 23, or didn't this kill the vote on 23?
Chairman, I believe your motion to reconsider passed, right?
Yes, it did, 62 to 13, I think it was,
So
roughly.
now you have to reconsider Article 20.
So now we have to redo 23.
And that's a 2/3 vote.
Yes, it is. Okay, so now we're back to 23. As I say, I've never had one before.
Mr. Moderator,
We're
would you
back
like
to
me to read that
23,
again?
Which is being reconsidered. And I guess, Oh, okay. And I guess, well, since while he's creating, Ms. Goodrich, you want to just reread 23? that-
Yep. I move that the town meeting vote to amend Section 3.2.2.3, Table of Uses, Apartments of the Auburn zoning bylaw as printed in the October 18, 2022 special town meeting warrant.
Okay. We ready? No, we're waiting. He's got to get the thing. Okay, we're ready. So is there a second? I'm doing it again. Is there a second? I just said second. Is there a second? Yeah, I have. Well, would you let me get the second first? Huh? I didn't say, no. He was setting up the screen for voting. I didn't say we were voting. Oh, okay. Are there now? Did you have a question, sir? What? The screen is cleared for voting when we have to do it. We have a second, and now are there any, All right, who's this? You got the second? Okay. Now, did you have a question, sir? Are there any questions? Right, okay.
Todd Turian, Precinct 3. Can I just ask Town Council if he has now been able to confirm that it is legally required for us to take this action in order to qualify for these grants?
Mr. Hennigan.
Mr. Chairman, thank you to the gentleman for showing me the statute reference. It is a mandatory obligation of the town. It does say that the town shall not be eligible for certain grants if it does not meet the requirements of this statute.
And
So
that
in answer
shall
to-
is absolute, is it not, Mr. Hennigan?
I'm sorry?
That shall is absolute.
Shall is mandatory
Yeah.
statutory.
Well, you say mandatory, I say whatever.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Greg Bowling, Precinct 4. I was formerly chair of the Master Plan Committee, and I do just want to mention the amount of effort that the town administration goes to in grant applications in order to save money to the taxpayers. So while not a Mass Works grant, the entire Auburn Street project and the Brotherton Way project were grant funded. There have been other things, Drury Square work that's been grant funded. I think it would be a huge, huge mistake to cut off that source of income to the town. It's only going to mean it comes out of our tax dollars. Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? I don't see any, so therefore, we vote, and it's a 2/3 vote. Yes, ready. Okay, the vote is over, and the vote is 64 to 15 to 1. So, it's 64 to 15. It passed 2/3, voted. Well, as I say, this is the first time in all my years as moderator I ever did reconsideration, so it was fun. Now we are on Article 21.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting vote to appropriate $8,500 from the cemetery perpetual care account for the rental of equipment to screen loam at Hillside Cemetery.
Is there a second? There is a second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. Voting is over. 72 to 7. 72 to 7. Article 22.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town meeting will vote to appropriate $155,000 from sewer retained earnings to purchase equipment and services to conduct a sewer system evaluation survey.
Is there a second? Second. Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's vote. And voting is over. The vote is 72 to 3. And before I ask for a motion to dissolve, I'd like to take one moment of personal privilege here. During all of Julie Jacobson's career in the town, I have been moderator in one form or another, And I just want to say, it's been great working with her, and the town has been very lucky to have had her. Okay, now I'll take a vote to dissolve. Moved, seconded, and yes, it passed. Thank you. Excellent work. Let's try not to have 9 2/3 votes again.
I think there were, but the one that... It's not my mother.
Okay. No, that's, I don't think it was crazy.